everyone. Welcome and thank you for attending today's IBM Middleware User Community webcast. My name is Kelsey Lammers and I will be hosting today's webcast. Today we have two topics in our Ask the Expert series. The first one is Functional Walkthrough, ITNM, version 3.9 and version 4.1.1 collectors. And our second topic is ITNM, version 4.1.1, ITCNM, version 6.4.3 integration. All phone lines are currently in listen-only mode. There will be a question and answer session towards the end of the presentation. However, you may ask a question at any time during the presentation using the questions window located in your control panel. Tomorrow we will have the recording and slides of today's presentation available on the IBM Middleware User Community website for you to access. You will receive a follow-up email with a link to the archives. Now I'd like to introduce our speakers for today. We have joining us Eugene and Raj. They are both software engineers with IBM. Thank you, Eugene and Raj, for joining us today. The floor is now yours.
Hello, everybody. Can you see my screen? Just to make sure.
Not yet.
I think you put me, sorry, this is Raj. I think you asked me to be the presenter, so maybe you should ask Eugene.
Okay, let's switch Eugene over. There we go.
Okay, so can we start?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Eugene Slave. For those of you who doesn't know me, I'm working as an ITNM support engineer since 2009. I'm going to present a few things about ITNM collectors. Okay. Those are the topics I'm going to present. How ITNM reacts with collectors, some information about relevant ITNM processes, how to debug a collector, how to configure a simple CSV collector, and some ideas about how to enrich topology only with data from a CSV collector. So let's start first with how ITNM interacts with collectors. Okay, so we have ITNM, we have an element management system, and we have the collector with the collector support library. Basically, from ITNM, collector agents send XML RPC requests, collector analyze those requests and send responses to ITNM. Just to mention, collector and collector support library can act as an independent on a different machine. They don't have to be on the same machine like ITNM. From ITNM perspective, collectors are just a discoverable network, and just the difference is a collector can provide data from many network devices. Collector interacts with EMS, sending request and receiving response. There are very different EMS from different vendors. So we have different interfaces depending on each vendor. Okay. On the right side, from ITNM perspective, there are only collectors, only agents, collector-related agents receive data from collector. And we are using some specialized processes I'll show you next in the presentation. So let's continue with data flow between collector and ITNM during a full discovery. So when a full discovery started, first step from the collector point of view is to read the collector C. It's a configuration file called disco collector finder c.cfg, where you can specify the port where the collector is running, plus, if necessary, it's an independent, if the collector is on another machine, you can specify also the host and some additional parameters. The table collector finder.collector rules, which keeps those data, contains also some other fields like request type and data source ID, but basically the most important parameters to put there are the port and the host. So first thing, the collector finder ncpdf collector process read this file and identify the host and the port where the collector is running. Second step is to issue an update data request. Not all the some collector download their data on startup, but some don't. So it's good to have this update data to refresh the collector data. Second step, third step, it's get info request, also from collector finder. The reason for this information is to gather collector data source ID. Usually it's one, but ITNM can theoretically handle multiple data sources from different collectors, not only one. So the next step, as I told you, is to get information about collector. Here you can see a response and XML response from get info request. This response is received by the collector finder and it's processed. Okay, next step is to gather the device list. Collector this get device list method is it's returning the ID of each device plus the IP address of each device. On the right side you have an example of XML data for device response of get device list request. You can see it has also a device ID, an IP, and the protocol. So with those information gathered by collector finder, the disco populate the finder's OQL table. There are several OQL tables associated with finders. Finder dispatch, finders return, and finders processing. So after a full discovery, you can see the data from finder to processing, and here you can see information how this OQL table is populated based on the data provided by collector, but by the get device list method. So we see some data are from get info, some data are from get device list, and that was the step. That was the next step of collector. Fine. Okay. Next step it's on the next step is involved collector details agent. From the OQL table finders from returns, internal discovery features are moving data from collector details agent. Now the collector details agent is requesting information about each device using the getDeviceInfo method. Here you can see how the collector responds. This is a sample of how collector responds to a getDeviceInfo request. Basically, we have information about device name, sysobject ID, sysname, and device description. Okay, next step. Here you can see how collector details .returns output look like for this particular device. We have sysname, description, name, and object ID populated by the getDeviceInfo information. Okay. Once we have the information on collector details agent, it sends also data for all the others collector-related agents. Each collector agent, it's also interrogating the collector via XML RPC helper, and the output is in the returns table of the agent. For example, here I have a collector layer 2 agent, which in returns get information from the method getLayer2Connections. That's another method of collector. Once we have all the information from all the collector-related agents populated, the process is continuing discovery by the features, and finally the final topology is built. Okay, so those are pretty much the steps for the data flow between collector and ITNM. From ITNM perspective, we have some relevant ITNM processes. As I told you, collector finder, which it's initially which is starting the process of connecting the collector. Hold on a second. Okay, continue. So, collector finder read the information about the host, port, and populate the finders tables. XML RPC helper is using my agent to get the information about okay. The difference is collector finder, it's not using XML RPC helper. This is used only by the collector agents. So once the data are passed to collector details, then all the agents will use the process NCPDH XML RPC. Okay, so plus we have all the collector agents. You can see all the agents here. And what we have to do before running a full discovery. We need to make sure all the IPs generated by collectors are inside discovery scope. Edit collector C, the file disco collector finder C.crg, and make sure all the agents related to collectors are enabled. And that's it. Okay. This part of presentation, I will show you some demonstration on my Qt window. We have some tool to debug and test collectors. The script NCP query collector.pl is very useful. It's a Perl-based tool, and it's very useful to investigate any possible collector discovery issue. Okay, there are two modes of operation, interactive and walk, for this tool. I'll show in my Qt. Interactive mode means we can connect to a collector and just run exactly some commands, some XML queries. I'll show in my okay, this is an I can install. We can have just a minute to see. So currently I have collector running on port 8081. The tool NCP query collector.pl is in NC Home Precision Script for scripts, and if you run the tool, okay, so there is also some information here about each method we are using. I'll start with get info. Get information about the collector. So you can see here we have a collector with ID, data source ID equal 1. It's important, this ID, because it's sent as parameter to all other methods. For example, we can have here get device list, which receives as parameter data source ID. So if I try to see a device list, and also request type, which is by default 0 for all devices generated by collector. Okay, now have a list of all the devices generated by collector. If I want to see exactly only one device, let's say this device. By the way, you can run paste and see a history. All the queries are running. So get device list one as data source ID. One meaning only one device, and then device ID, which is optical. Okay, so I'll show. So this way you can actually interrogate collector and just see exactly all the information with a help command. You can see all the methods you are able to run here. Okay, let's continue. So this is the tool. And here you can see a list of all the some relevant examples of command in interactive mode. You can get information about collector, list of the devices from collector, list only one device, and also some interesting commands like get list for all method, which do a single RPC call for all the devices, only for this method name, get device info method name. Okay. Next way to interrogate ITNM collector is the work mode. Work mode is pretty interesting because you can actually make a clone of an existing collector. For example, I'll show in my PuTTY. If you put the option -work source 1, you will receive exactly all the RPC calls collector is able to respond on. So if I'm running this command and indirect this to a configuration file, like let's say collector.snapshot.cfg, you see in this collector snapshot.cfg, you can see all the information from generated by the collector. And this way you can actually make another clone of this collector using the NCP, NCP fake collector.pl. So we have collector.snapshot.cfg and with NCP for -cfg the CFG file generated and put another port. Let's see. Okay, so pretty much we have a clone of initial collector running on port 8090 instead of 8081. Was like the initial one. Okay. So those are the steps to clone a collector from the port 8081 and create another one on port 8089. Generate a snapshot on existing collector, and then use the ncpfake collector.pl command to clone the existing collector. So from ITNM perspective, it doesn't matter if it's on port 8089 or 8081. Once you set the port on the disco collector seed, ITNM will handle. And this is a great advantage if you have an EMS with delays in accessing the slower EMS. Let's continue. To configure collectors. All the collectors are present on NC Home Precision Collector Directory. We have two kinds of collectors, Perl, collectors written in Perl, and collectors written in Java. As I already mentioned, you can configure the collector to run on another machine, but in case of Perl collector, Perl might be installed on the target machine. Also for Java collector directory, you need to have a Java virtual machine installed on the target machine. Also, the collector configuration files means contains data to connect to the ITNM and also data to connect to EMS. In terms of Perl collectors, we have a general section on a configuration file and a data source section. General section contains some parameters like debug, which is 0 or 1. Either you want debug information or don't want. The port where the connection is listening ITNM RPC calls, timeouts, and queue size. Data source definition is different for each collectors because there are different EMS depending on vendors, and that's why each collector has different configuration settings depending on the type of EMS. To start a Perl collector, all you have to do is to run the command ncp perl collector script, which usually it's main.pl, and the option -cfg and the collector configuration file. To show you demonstration, so we go to NC Home Precision Collectors for collectors. See, there are different kinds of collectors depending on EMS. For example, for generic CSV, just my collector is already running, but I can stop it. So to start the collector, the command is nctcall main.pl -vfg and the collector configuration file, which in this case is generic collector.cfg. Okay. If we take a look on the CFG file, as I told you, it's a general section which contains information related to how to connect to ITNM and the data source. In this case, we have some subsection. Data acquisition subsection. It's present on all the core collectors, and it contains information about what data to provide. For example, if we don't want information about layer 2 connection, we'll set the get layer 2 connection to 0. Okay. We introducing the Java collectors, which contains a new framework to allow development of collectors in Java. And they are pretty much similar with the core collectors library, just they were rewritten in Java. We implemented also generic CSV collector in Java, and I implemented also new scripts to run Java-based collectors.
Okay, Eugene, should we also do the questions? Because I've seen some people have questions. So one of the questions I've seen is the if the collector is part of the current ITNM version 3.9, version 4.1 offering. The answer is yes. It is. It's part of the product per se since 3.7 or 3.6, I think. Another question, Eugene, can you also take the other questions in the question side of the presentation?
So if you can type, say for me.
Yes. Someone, Srinivasa, is asking if we can get to use the update data function to get data loaded for all collectors.
So pretty much most of the collector doesn't need this data, because once they are started, they connect it to EMS and load it data automatically. But some doesn't load data at startup. So it's pretty much it. It's not mandatory, only for a few collectors, but it's safer to set it.
Okay. And the last question that I can see here is, where can we find this info online? How to run and commands related. It's by Chris Zanley.
How to run?
It was where can we find this info online? I think it's referring to the collector information, and how to run and commands related to running. But I think it's probably the information about how to run the collectors and the commands that you need to run in the documentation.
We have a documentation online. I'll try to just Google uh, how to run ITNM, how to run for collectors, and you'll find it. It's in the standard documentation for ITNM 411.
Okay, perfect. Does anyone else have any other question related to the collectors? I don't see any other questions. Eugene, is there anything else related to the Java collector so that we can pass through directly? I'm asking this because for the interest of time, we need to hurry up.
Just the way here you can see how the Java collectors are, how to run a Java collector. We have new scripts, and also you can see if you can contact me directly and provide you the presentation. I have a more presentation about how to enrich topology using Java CSV collector. Just 2 words. This is what I try to achieve, to add some information. Set up devices.csv, set up interfaces and layer 2 links for each device, and here you have to set up CSV collector, and that's it. Just copy the sample to a properties file and update it properly. Run the collector and run a full discovery. And you can get information about some additional information like city, country, location in this case, based on information explicitly from collector. And the catch is when you put in devices.cfg to add an extra info information. Extra info is here, and have also data in extra info with m_city, name of the city, and /m_city. That's it.
Okay, perfect. All other questions that come in, please send us an email, or please send Eugene an email, and he's going to be more than happy to answer you. Thank you, Eugene.
Okay.
Okay, let's switch to my screen. Everyone, do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So, hi everyone, my name is Raj Brajan. I work for ITNM Level 2 in the EMEA side of things. I basically do the same job as Eugene, Level 2 support for ITNM, and since I think this year, TNCM as well. I'm with IBM, well, on IBM projects I started 8.5 years ago, and I've been part of the Level 2 team for the last 4 years, I think. It's been so long. Okay, so what I want to present to you today is the integration part of how it should look like and what it should do between ITNM and ITNCM. The versions I want you to see here are the version ITNM 4.1.1 and TNCM version 6.4, but .1.3. It's 6.4.3. And how they are in comparison to the previous integrations that we had, versions 3.9 and 6.3. just going through the installation. So first thing you have to do is to install the two products. First, you can install either TNCM or ITNM first. It's not a big thing if you change the order of it. So TNCM can be installed on some platforms, AIX or RHEL. Like I've told here in the presentation, usually, for example, a machine for testing purposes, or you want to only test like a driver, or you just want to proof a concept, 60 gigabyte, it works. But I would definitely advise something over 100 gigabytes of hard drive for bigger installations. There's an IBM prerequisite scanner for it. You can use that. The installation is pretty easy and pretty straightforward. As usual, we need to have some RAM, and an 8 gigabyte of RAM is like the minimum that I would advise. There are to the planning, so both installations are very well documented on the Knowledge Center IBM site. I definitely urge you to use it, as it's really good, and you can definitely make use of the steps defined in there. This is a small part of it. What I used for this integration for this test and for this presentation is I used Oracle. I installed an Oracle database for the TNCM. I created an ICOS user. I gave him the rights to it, and also the most important thing that I did, and that is needed also later for the single sign-on, is to use a naming and a domain name that is both that is the same for the domain name is the same for both machines. So I used one machine with ITNM, one machine with NCM, and for both of them to work, I've done something like this. I didn't have like a proper domain set up in the environment, in the test environment, so we didn't have like a DNS working to assign names, and I had to use thus the etc host files. These are the two machines, so basically the 7.18, it's the ITNM machine, and the 7.51, it's the TNCM machine. This etc host file record is on both the ITNM and the TNCM machine. So if you have this and you use during the installation the full so-called domain name, a DNS name, it's going to work just fine, and the sync is going to be just fine. So this is one of the key points. If you ever have to do this integration, always use this, all the machines have to be in the same domain, because otherwise you're going to have a lot of grief, and at the end you're going to see that the sync is not happening. Of course, some of the ports needs to be open. You have like a list also in the documentation, and then you start the ITNCM installation. You select it to be integrated solution. It will actually ask you during the installation, is this an integration also with ITNM? And you're gonna say yes. Everything else is a next collection. You're gonna just have to input the Oracle user, the FTP user, because TNCM is using also FTP to send or receive, actually to send some or receive configuration packages. You can actually use that to be able to download or upload some of the images for the routers. You know, we can get a big, like really big, and so you're going to need the FTP to do it. After installation of ITNCM, you should install the TNCM drivers. I used the basic drivers and some smart modules version 17, I think. But the basic should also contain the ITNM driver. So basically, ITNM is seen as a network resource that can be queried by the TNCM. Okay, let's see. Yeah, the end result when you're going into, by default it installs in IBM Tivoli Netcool NCM. If you, at the end, if you run an ITNCM SH status, you should get like something like this. So basically everything's running. Well, I'm gonna talk to you about this current log level. Usually it's info, it's not debug, but you can change it, and you're gonna get also the information about where the TNCM database runs and what's the SID for it, the SID for it. So at the end, you have TNCM installed and its driver are loaded. When you're opening the Java application that is running on the 7001 port, you're gonna see this, something like this. Usually it's IntelliDen, so the IntelliDen is the super user that it's being defined by default. It's like tipadmin in ITNM. But for my purposes, I've just used Rarish as a user in this case. So it looks like this when you open it, and that's the main view for the IBM Tivoli Netcool Configuration Manager. Okay. Then we install ITNM. I think most of you are already accustomed to seeing this diagram. It's showing you that ITNM it's pretty much part object server, part topology server, part precision core, part MTG trap D with its rules, part gateways, part this diagram actually shows you the different component. Okay, as you know, ITNM 4.1.1, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you take it, it's currently only Linux flavor installation, so we don't support other type of Unix or Windows installation. So we only have Linux RHEL 5 and 6 and SUSE. From my experience, if you just want to load or to have like for a small network, you can use it on you can use a 50 gigabyte hard drive. However, production can go well over 100 gigabyte. It's actually depending on the if you have also the database installed on the same server. If you don't, then you can go under 50, but if you have more than that, if you have also the database installed on it, it will grow. The main thing that grows is the database. Also, the ITNM installation comes with a prerequisite scanner, so it's not very it's not very complicated, and it doesn't go really into more in depth, but it's some it checks for libs, for some space, and some normal things that you should be aware of before installing. As usual, for ITNM, I'm gonna recommend a minimum of 8 gigabyte, just just to have it working. But if you have it in production, I would say 16 gigabyte. It's really necessary. And some customers have a lot of domains. ITNM is using a lot of RAM because all the stitching and some other processes are RAM resident, so we are using RAM to speed up the processes. So if you have a lot of domains with a lot of entities and you run discovery a lot at the same time, or you have more domains, you're gonna see the demand for RAM increasing. Okay, the installation is quite simple. You just run you copy the package, you untar it and unzip it, and then you just run either the install in console or in from Launchpad from a nice GUI. In this case, I use the normal 16,310 range of ports, so the pretty standard ports for tip installation. I use the normal Omnibus ports, like 4100 for the object server. 411 ITNM comes with the DB2 installation package, so I used this part of the installation package to also deploy the DB2 with the normal 50,000 port, and I named the database ITNM. Okay, at the end of it, this is how it, when you're running a status, this is how it should look, and also you should see the object server with the probe running and also the tip running. I'm not going to go into the fixpack installation for the moment. Usually it's best, for example, if you do, I had a customer, for example, who upgraded, for example, from 3.9 to 4.11. But he forgot to do some the steps he didn't redo the steps that are required on the NCM part of things, so he couldn't sync up correctly. It was actually syncing up once and then it didn't. So always remember, if you do a fixpack installation and you are not very sure of afterwards why it's not running correctly, it's okay to run the integration part again, because it might be that something was affected, but you are just to be sure, it's best to redo some of the steps, especially the ones that ask you to copy files from one server to another. This is from my personal experience, and I can tell you that it can take a while until you actually guess where the problem is, if you don't. Okay, then on the ITNM, you have to run the itncm_tip_linux.bin package. Before, in 3.9, you actually have to install first a tarball that was at first part of the TNCM installation package until Fixpack 2, including Fixpack 2 3.9. After 3.9 Fixpack 2, so Fixpack 3, this was part of the ITNM installation package. So this first part, is not necessary anymore in 4.11. 4.11 comes with this package already as part of the installation package, and it's laid down with the ITNM 4.11 installation directly. Okay. You basically run the bin package, you follow the on-screen questions, and it will ask you about where is ITNCM installed, where is the ITNCM database installed, what is the port, what is the user, what is the password, and just input that information in there. Because this way it will know how to connect also to the other side. Next step is going to be to deploy the rules file. So some of the ITNM needs some of its rules from the network knowledge library to be modified to also add rules pertaining to the TNCM. This is related to the way the architecture works. So it's like this. ITNM does a discovery. After the discovery, you have like a topology. TNCM is querying ITNM via port. So it's querying actually the tip connected to the ITNM. So it's querying port 16,312 if you use the normal range. So it's querying via tip, and it gets from the ITNM side of things, it gets a copy of a simplified copy of the information of the topology, like IP address, like if I remember correctly, the OID, and it's really simple. So it's not like full topology information. It's just like an IP, a name, and another information. But it's really simple. And with this information, then TNCM can do its own discovery. It's run like an auto discovery. And if the TNCM server can access those devices, it can also run an import of that particular device. If you're familiar with TNCM, it basically goes and gets the answer to multiple commands. For example, in Cisco, it gets a get running config output, which is then translated into a file, into an XML, and then you can basically have like a copy of the configuration for that particular router. Afterwards, this information is then synced with ITNM. How? Basically, the TNCM server is sending sending an SNMP informant, an SNMP trap toward the ITNM server, toward actually the server where you have an entity trap D working. And this trap is received by the probe, by the entity trap probe. It's then passed through its knowledge center rules, so its NCKL rules. And then with this information, an alert reaches the object server. Then the object server, as you know, ITNM is using an NCPG event or a gateway to read all the alerts that are coming into the object server. This particular alert is then read. It detects that it's a TNCM event. It's a TNCM SNMP informed from the TNCM side. And then it reads some of the fields that have been populated in the alert. And then with this particular information, it's basically the NCM key information, it then dumps this information into ITNM NSIM table. So in this way, the ITNM knows that device A and device B have actually been imported into TNCM and have this particular NCM key. This is the way the syncing is done. If, for example, you have a missing, you have a device that has been imported into TNCM, but there is not a record of it in the ITNM TNCM key, the TNCM table, it's network entity mapping. Then it's not gonna think it's been synced, and then you're gonna have a problem and not be able to actually run any NCM application from the ITNM tip URL. So these are already on so these steps, including the NCKL, are already part of the documentation. I can go through it really rapidly, but it's already on the site, so it's no need. It's actually the documentation is good, so it's a step-by-step. You cannot miss it, really cannot miss it. And the other part that's really interesting is copying. First, to copy some keys. We actually have the key, the trust key, into to copy them from ITNM to TNCM to be able to access the ITNM server. So it's basically you actually have to have the proper certificates for it, so which you have to import from TIP into from ITNM into TNCM. This way, when the communication via TIP happens, the communication is authenticated and TNCM can read from the TIP. And you also have to copy some of the SSL files and props file from one side to the other for the TNCM to be able to communicate as it should. Okay, I'm not going to go further through the installation because this is already on the site. So I'm just going to show you real quick how it looks into both TIP and TNCM. So okay, this is in TNCM. Like I was telling you, here is where you actually define towards which SNMP server you want these traps to be sent. So you really need to put in here the IP address of the server where you have MT2 trap D running. So in my case, because I already did a single install, so everything on a single machine for ITNM. So this is the address of the ITNM machine. So this, you really need to put it there. So in TNCM, you have something like this. People who have played with TNCM know about this. You need to define a new network resource. And here we just put like ITNM machine. The vendor you selected to be IBM, type Tivoli, model network manager, and the version 4.x. Okay, this is okay. I've created the ITNM machine. That is okay. But however, you need you either create from here. You have to create a resource access. You have to create a device script. However, if you're not really versed in it, you can just go right-click on it, resource access. Here is the XML version of it. You just click edit, and this will give you this nice GUI, which is really good. And here you just input where is the tip machine working for ITNM. So in here we just put 172.26.7.18 for my case. And you put 16 for this is the RMI port that is being used to communicate with TIP. You can go to scripts, and here if you leave the domain empty, it will try to pull the data from all the domains. In my case, I wouldn't do this, so I would just put ITNM 411. This is the name of the domain that I want to import. I save this. And from here, I want also to be able to put the name. In here, you just input the ITNM user that has the right to interrogate or has admin rights or is able to actually interrogate and get information from ITNM tip. So in my case, ITNM admin, password netcool, and that should be it. I'm good. Okay, so I'm gonna try to import it. This is a next. I'm gonna put here, let's say, an ITNM TNCM test. Okay, and now if you don't, usually it says in summary. So if you go into work, you're gonna see the UOW. In my case, it seems to have done correctly. It seems to have found 2 devices. Okay, it's gonna say already present NCM because I already run this for before when I was testing. If not, it would have actually gotten everything for this. So that's good. We are fine. So in this case, this is one of the machines. If I want to also synchronize it, it's not a synchronized with ITNM, but a synchronized device with ITNCM data. So usually when this is not done, you just do a no-sum import because it's not going to do the import by itself. So we say test import. This is one of the devices which are in my ITNM 411 machine. Okay. As you can see, the operation started. and it's gonna try using this driver, which it's found, because it knows to use this driver because it has gotten this information about the about this particular router. It has gotten it from the OID that ITNM discovered. So it's basically using that particular OID to guess which driver to be used. If I don't want this driver to be used, I can change this from here. So it's basically try to use this. Right now I cannot use it because it's still doing something. Okay, and it's finished. It says that it was done, blah blah blah. Okay. Now these are the two tables that I want you to keep in mind. These are the two tables that I've told you are the ones we are keeping the sync between the two systems. The network config MGR, which is in ITNM, and the NM entity mapping in TNCM. For example, in here you can see that, well, I did it also for other devices. So in here, let's say we have 7 records. In here we only have 4 records. That means that there are actually 3 devices which are not synced correctly. This is the first step when you're troubleshooting as to why a certain device is not synced correctly. How does it look into an ITNM machine? This is the way. First thing, if you don't have these particular menus in a network view, it means there's something wrong. Either your user doesn't have the TNCM rights, and you have to make sure that your user, which you are using to log in, is having these rights, or there's not a record for this device into the table that I've shown you here. So if you don't have one here, then it's not going to show you this particular right-click menus. If you want, for example, to check, well, the reports, as you know, ITNM 411 doesn't come with the TCR installed in it anymore, so you're going to have to actually install TCR. Also, this step is part of the documentation, so you can look at it right away. You also have the different things like applying a policy, etc., etc. But in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through it. One of the things that I usually use to troubleshoot something for TNCM as to why I cannot connect to a certain device is this IDT. It's IDT. It's like a terminal connection to a device. You can actually connect to it and see what's happening. And this device activity sequence is going to give you what were the TNCM actions that have been done on this particular device. As you can see here, there was an import configuration EOW that was asked by me, and here you can see that this import was successful. So this is good to see actually from ITNM directly without going to a TNCM what were the actions done on this particular devices directly, and this way it's easier and faster, and you have a bigger control on to whatever actions have been done on this particular device. I don't know if this one is going to work. Haven't tested it for the moment. Any questions, please? Let me check if there are any questions for this particular part of the show and tell. I'm not seeing anything into the chat window, so I'm gonna guess there are none. As usual, if there are any questions, please let me know, and I'll try to have this particular documentation also uploaded into the site. And if you didn't have the time to look through it, or you had more questions, I think it will help you with it. Okay, I think I'm done.
Okay, great. Well, I'm not seeing any more questions coming through. So thank you everyone for attending today's webcast. Again, the recording and slides will be available in the webcast archives. You will receive a link tomorrow. As you exit, please take a few moments to fill out the post-event survey to help us improve future events. We truly appreciate your feedback. This concludes today's event. Thank you and have a fantastic day.
Thank you very much.